Alright guys, buckle up. Because today we're not talking about your average storms or mild tremors. Oh no, we're diving headfirst into the deadliest natural disasters in human history. The kind of stuff that makes you thankful your biggest problem today is a traffic jam, or your Wi-Fi going out for 10 minutes. Let me put it this way. When nature decides to hit the reset button, it doesn't mess around. Earthquakes that swallowed entire cities, cyclones that turned coastlines into watery graves, volcanic eruptions so loud they were heard across the world, and floods that drowned millions. These aren't just stories. They're real events that wiped out millions of people in the blink of an eye. Today, we're talking about disasters so massive that they didn't just destroy buildings, they changed history. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be counting your blessings that you weren't anywhere near these disasters when they hit. Stay tuned, because the stories behind these events are as wild as the disasters themselves. From the earthquake that buried an entire city in Turkmenistan to the cyclone that killed 500,000 people in a single night. This is going to be a ride. So hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get into it. The 1948 Ashgabat earthquake, Turkmenistan. All right, guys. It's late 1948, and Ashgabat, Turkmenistan is just going about its business. People are living their lives, completely oblivious to the fact that in just a few hours their entire world is about to come crashing down. Literally, peaceful night, a city going about its evening. But then, boom, without warning, the ground starts shaking like someone flipped the Earth's chaos switch. We're talking a magnitude 7.3 earthquake, people. That's not just your furniture moving a bit, that's the Earth throwing a full-on tantrum. Buildings weren't just shaking, they were collapsing like cardboard houses in the wind. The city turned into a concrete graveyard in a matter of minutes. And for the 110,000 people who lost their lives that night, there was no escape. They were buried under the rubble, their homes turned into tombs. Now, here's the kicker. The Soviet government didn't exactly go all out on publicizing this. You'd think an earthquake of this magnitude, killing that many people, would be all over the news. But nope, they kept it pretty hush-hush, downplaying the disaster. Why? Because apparently acknowledging it would have looked bad. Yeah, imagine worrying about PR when your city is buried under rocks. Classic. And get this, Ashgabat wasn't exactly built to handle a natural disaster like this. I mean, have you seen pictures of the place back then? We're talking old-school Soviet architecture, and trust me, structural integrity wasn't exactly the top priority. When the earthquake hit, those buildings didn't stand a chance. Now, if the buildings weren't enough of a death trap, the aftermath certainly was. Fires broke out from broken gas lines, people trapped under debris had no chance, and there weren't enough emergency services to handle the sheer scale of destruction. Imagine trying to rescue people with nothing more than basic tools. Yeah, good luck with that. It's like trying to clean up a battlefield with a broom. By the way, the Ashgabat earthquake wasn't just a freak event, it was a game changer. After this, the Soviet government was forced to rethink how they built cities in earthquake zones, but for the people of Ashgabat, it was too late. Entire families were wiped out, neighborhoods disappeared, and to this day, many of the dead remain buried beneath what's left of the old city. 110,000 lives lost in a single night. That's enough people to fill a stadium, gone just like that. Ashgabat went from a bustling Soviet city to a literal ghost town in the blink of an eye, and here's the part that hits the hardest. The government never released an official death toll because, you know, secrets. But we all know the truth. This was one of the deadliest earthquakes in history, and it left a scar on Turkmenistan that will never heal. The 1883 Krakatoa eruption, Indonesia. This next disaster isn't just about nature throwing a fit, it's about the Earth literally exploding. We're talking Krakatoa, 1883. Now, if you've never heard of Krakatoa, don't worry, because after this, you'll never forget it. This eruption was so loud, they say it was heard 3,000 miles away. Yeah, 3,000 miles, let that sink in. Krakatoa wasn't just a volcanic eruption, it was a planet-shaking, world-ending event. On August 27, 1883, the island of Krakatoa in Indonesia decided it had enough of being an island and blew itself apart in one of the most violent volcanic eruptions ever recorded. And when I say violent, I'm not just talking about a little lava flow here. No, this eruption was like setting off 13,000 atomic bombs. The sound alone could have burst your eardrums if you were anywhere near it. But here's the thing. The eruption wasn't even the worst part. Oh no, you thought the volcano blowing its top was the main event? Guess again. What made Krakatoa so deadly was the tsunamis that followed. Picture it. A wall of water 100 feet high, moving at breakneck speed, crashing into the coastal villages of Java and Sumatra. 36,000 people were killed, most of them swept away by these giant waves like they were nothing. You've got this massive explosion, and then boom, water surges across the land, flattening everything in its path. Towns were wiped off the map in minutes. And here's a fun fact, if you can call it fun. Krakatoa was so powerful that it sent ash and debris into the atmosphere, blocking out the sun and dropping global temperatures by 2 degrees. For months, people around the world were treated to blood-red sunsets, thanks to all the volcanic ash floating around. Great for painters. Terrible for everyone else. Now, Krakatoa didn't just stop there. Oh no. This bad boy didn't just destroy itself, it created something new. After the eruption, half the island was gone, literally blown apart. But what's left of Krakatoa, still dangerous. In fact, a new volcano, Anak Krakatoa, which means child of Krakatoa, rose up from the sea years later. And get this, it's still active today. Yup, the kids carrying on the family tradition of terrorizing the planet. Just lovely. And here's a crazy tidbit for you. Scientists believe that Krakatoa's eruption was so loud, it holds the title for the loudest sound ever heard by humans. Think about that. The earth literally screamed, and people halfway across the world heard it. 36,000 lives lost, a volcano that ripped itself apart, tsunamis that wiped out entire coastlines, and an explosion that literally echoed around the planet. Krakatoa wasn't just a natural disaster, it was a full-on earth tantrum, and trust me, it left a mark that's still being felt today. But hey, at least it gave us some pretty sunsets, right? The 1931 China floods. All right, let's take a little trip to 1931 China, where Mother Nature decided to remind us that when she wants to, she can turn an entire country into an ocean. We're talking about the deadliest floods in recorded history, the 1931 China floods. And no, this isn't your average heavy rain. We're talking floods so big they wiped out millions. First things first, how does something like this even happen? It wasn't just one thing, it was everything. Picture the perfect storm. You've got snowmelt from an extra cold winter, torrential rains, and a bunch of rivers, like the Yangtze and Yellow rivers, just waiting for an excuse to overflow. And boy, did they. By the summer of 1931, these rivers weren't just flooding, they were spilling out everywhere, like someone left the tap on, but for, you know, an entire country. The numbers are straight up jaw-dropping. Over 4 million people, yep, 4 million, lost their lives. That's not just a statistic, that's an entire population wiped out by water. Villages and cities were submerged, with some places seeing floodwaters rise as high as 53 feet. That's taller than a 5-story building, folks. People drowned in their homes, entire communities were swept away, and those lucky enough to survive, they had to deal with famine, disease, and complete devastation afterward. And here's the kicker. This flood wasn't just a flash in the pan. Oh no, this disaster dragged on for months. Imagine trying to survive in a landscape where the water never seems to go down, where your home is now part of an endless swamp, and food is almost impossible to find. Yeah, that's what people were dealing with, and you thought your basement flooding was a pain. The devastation didn't stop at just drowning people. After the water receded, what little it did, survivors had to face a whole new nightmare, famine and disease. With crops destroyed and drinking water contaminated, people were dying from starvation, cholera, and dysentery. It was like the flood itself wasn't enough. Mother Nature decided to throw in a bonus round of suffering. Now here's the brutal part. The Chinese government was in total chaos at the time, making it nearly impossible to respond properly. They didn't have the resources to help, and what little aid they could muster wasn't even close to enough. So, millions of people were left to fend for themselves in a literal sea of misery. By the time it was all over, entire regions were transformed into wastelands. Farms that once fed the population were nothing but mud, and entire cities had vanished. The Yangtze River alone was responsible for about 2 million deaths, but the worst part? No one even knows the true death toll. It could be higher, but hey, when you're talking in the millions, does it even matter at that point? So there you have it. The 1931 China floods. The deadliest flood, the deadliest natural disaster, period. Millions dead, an entire country drowning, and a reminder that when water decides to show up, you've got 2 options: swim or die.